Saving money for retirement may seem unnecessary, but truth be told, it's among the only way to peacefully retire and live financially free one day. In fact, one of the best investors of all time, Warren Buffett, said, "Do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving." Where he also says that if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. So understand that saving money for retirement has to be a top priority, and when you do save, this doesn't mean to have your cash sitting under your bed, but more so to find ways to have your money work for you, which is why the earlier you start, the more time you have for your investments to grow, and the better your financial future could be. Now, a recent study from Northwestern Mutual showed that Americans expected to need $1.46 million in savings to retire comfortably, and that's even up 15% from last year, where the estimate was 1.27 million. And another report shows that you would need $1.8 million to retire comfortably, but understand that these numbers are based on today's economy for people that are at or near retirement right now. But just so you understand how this works, a simple rule for those planning retirement is called the 80% rule, which means you should aim to have savings to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. So if you currently make $60,000 in a year and you want to retire right now, your retirement savings should be able to produce $48,000 in income. Or another popular rule is called the 4% rule, which means of all your retirement savings, you should be able to comfortably live off of taking 4% out of your investments every year, with the goal to cover expenses for at least 30 years. Now let's say someone who is currently close to retirement says that they could live off of $50,000 per year. They actually wouldn't need 1.4 to 1.8 million that the media is saying, because for many, they'll also receive some sort of pension, social security, or even have a sort of side hustle as an income source. So with that in mind, let's say that a soon-to-be retiree expects to earn $10,000 in retirement from any of those factors. That means they would only need to produce $40,000 from their retirement savings, and using the 4% rule, that means that they would need $1 million. Of course, everyone's position is different, and this is just a generic example. Some may need less, some may need more, depending on your lifestyle. But what about those in their 20s that have 40 years until retirement? Because of inflation, the amount that you're going to need in 40 years is going to make that number different, and assuming inflation increases at an average rate of 2.5%, that means by 2065, you would need a $2.7 million portfolio in order to be equivalent to a $1 million portfolio in today's economy. Now, the S&P 500 has averaged a 10% annual return all the way back to 1957, but to keep things more realistic with a diversified portfolio, I'm going to use a portfolio that averages 8% annually. So to ensure that we at least have a safe retirement by age 65, to reach that amount starting at age 25, we would have to save and invest $800 every month. And do know that this includes all sort of retirement accounts and employer contributions. And so to give a broader understanding, this means that if you have an income of $60,000 per year, you would need to save 16% for retirement. I know this may sound high for some, but also realize that as inflation increases, the income you earn should follow as well. In fact, in 1984, the median household income in the US was $58,000, where it is now roughly $80,000. And if it increases 2.5% per year with inflation, in 20 years, an $80,000 income would be equivalent to a $131,000 income, and you may very well be able to contribute more than $800 per month. And so because everyone's income is different, I want to emphasize a common ground here that many experts recommend, and that is that you should aim to save at least 15% of your income every year over the course of your career, which right now America is failing to do so because the average savings rate is only 4.4% as of November 2024. But at this point, and for all ages, before you heavily invest, it's highly recommended that you have an emergency fund set up so that you can properly invest and not worry if something were to come up and you had to sell your investments. Especially if the economy suffered and the market was at a bottom, that would be the absolute worst time to sell. So one of the best places I recommend here is to use a high yield savings account, because you can earn much more on your cash than if it were sitting in a big traditional bank like Chase that only pays a 0.01% of interest. Most high yield savings accounts right now are paying around 4% on your cash, and if you're interested, I'll have links in the description below to other content that I've created on this. Which, speaking of, I've also created a video on the optimal order to invest your money that I highly recommend checking out after this video. So knowing that, something that you really need to take advantage of for your future is to use tax-advantaged investing accounts like the IRA, 401k, and HSA if you're eligible. But especially for the accounts that you are investing in and that you're not going to be touching for a long time, you really want to prioritize growth investments, because even if you can average a 1% higher over time, the power of compound interest, where your money is just continuously growing more and more over time, it will allow you to have a much greater outcome in the future. For example, I mentioned that $800 per month at 8% for 40 years would offer you a $2.5 million portfolio, but if you instead averaged 9% per year, you would end with close to a $3.4 million portfolio. That's close to $1 million difference. But don't forget that $1 million portfolio today could allow someone to retire right now, but in 40 years, you would need $2.7 million. So based on the guidelines for how much you need to save to stay on track, it's generally recommended that if you are at the age of 25, that you should aim to have at least half of your salary in savings. So a study showed that those between age 20 to 24 currently have a median salary of $38,000, where those 25 to 34 averaged $54,000. So if you're 25, your salary is $50,000, you should aim to have $25,000 right now saved for retirement. Knowing that, let's now go over how much you should save for those in the 30s. Now, I will say straight up, the later that you start, the more difficult it's going to be to have significant savings for your retirement, but it's not impossible. Just know that by starting 10 years later, using a median household income in the US, with your savings growing 6% per year, if you save 15% of your income, the difference between starting at age 25 or 35 is close to $1 million. Because of this, to step it up a notch, I highly recommend maxing out as much of the tax-advantaged accounts that you can benefit from, such as the 401k, IRA, and HSA if you're eligible. And because you are still early and you have so much time until you're going to touch the funds in retirement, I personally recommend starting with aggressive yet safe low-cost index funds. And don't forget that for many of you, the 30s may be the time that you're getting student loans fully paid off and you're building up your career, so your income may rise, but that could be offset by the fact that maybe you're starting a family or taking on other financial responsibilities. But based on the data, for those between age 35 to 44, the average retirement savings account was $141,000. But what's important to know here is that an average refers to the total amount in savings by the number of people, so this number is skewed because the wealthiest people raise the average, where the more accurate number to look at here would be the median savings by age, which is the middle point in a sorted list, and for this age bracket, it is $45,000. So whether you are above or below that, it doesn't matter, because if you're at age 30, you should aim to have 1 times your salary in retirement savings. So if you're currently making $50,000, that means that you would need to have $50,000 in savings right now to be on the right track. And then if you are at age 35, the amount saved should be 2 times your salary. So if you have a $60,000 salary, that means you should aim to have $120,000 in savings. So knowing that, assuming that you are 35 right now, by the time that you are 65 to retire, that means that it would be 30 years away rather than 40 years. So $1 million portfolio in today's economy would be equivalent to just over a $2 million portfolio in 2055. And so if you are 35 and on track with the example I just showed of a $60,000 salary having $120,000 in savings, that means that you would be ahead of the previous example, because to be on track for a $2 million portfolio by age 65, you would need to contribute $600 every month until then. But if you have absolutely no savings at all, that means that you would have to contribute $1,500 every month until you're 65. That difference is exactly why I emphasize to start investing as early as you can. But knowing that, let's now go over how much you should have saved in the 40s. Now, it is a known fact that people spend less as they get older, which of course is different for everyone, but the biggest factors that could help you save and invest more at this age would be to have fully paid off bad debt like student loans or car loans, or other big expenses like a wedding that could significantly impact how much you can save. Now, I really want to emphasize that if you're just starting now in the 40s and you feel behind, the worst thing you could do is risk it all at the casino or hope that individual stocks will carry your portfolio forward. In fact, one of the best investors of all time, Ray Dalio, says trying to time the stock market is harder than competing in the Olympics. So if you ever feel yourself trading stocks outside of your financial cushion, you have to realize that there are corporations with cutting-edge technology to make the best decisions possible, and even with that, roughly 90% of active fund managers underperform their index. And yet alone, a blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a newspaper could select a portfolio that would do just as well as ones carefully selected by experts. So if there's anything I learned and want to emphasize in this video, it's that if you are investing on your own, diversification needs to be your best friend. Ray Dalio literally says that if you are not aggressive, you are not going to make money, and if you are not defensive, you are not going to keep keep money. So at this age, I really want to emphasize the discipline to save and invest as much as possible. Avoid touching the funds because you still have a lot of time for your investments to compound over time, especially if you find strong growth investments that you can let ride and do whatever you can to invest as much as possible. You still have a lot of time for your investments to grow. And so to see if you are on track, if you are at age 40, it is recommended that you have 3 times your salary in savings. So if your salary is $70,000, you would want to have $210,000 in savings. And then for those that are 45, you would want 4 times your salary. So if you have a $75,000 salary, you would want $300,000 in savings. And so let's say that you're 45, to retire in 20 years, that means a $1 million portfolio in today's economy to retire off of would be equal to $1.6 million in 20 years. And so if you are on track with 4 times your savings, for this example, $300,000, to reach $1.6 million in 20 years, you would have to continue adding $1,100 every month. But remember, that includes all employer contributions and all retirement accounts that you have. But if you are 45 with no retirement savings at all and you're just getting started, you would need to save $3,600 every month until you are 65 in order to retire comfortably. Knowing that, let's now move on to the 50s. At this point, the hope is that you have some sort of savings, and if you don't, you're really going to want to step it up a notch, and it would be wise to talk to someone who can give you proper guidance on strategies tailored specifically for your position. But I will point out a key tip that could help is that if you are over the age of 50, the government allows catch-up contributions in accounts like the IRA that is an extra $1,000 per year, 401k that is an extra $7,500 per year, and then the HSA is for those over age 55, you can do an extra $1,000 per year. I'll also point out that I've heard many stories of others who are not expected to retire by the time that they wanted, and at this point in their life, they increased the risk with their investments, specifically individual stocks, that ended up not doing well and losing majority of their savings and costing them even more years of having to work. But to see if you're on the right track, it is recommended that if you are at the age of 50, you should have 6 times your salary saved. So if your salary is $80,000, you should have $480,000 saved. And by age 55, you should have 7 times your salary saved. So if you have an $80,000 salary, that means that you should have $560,000 in savings right now. And so let's say that you're at the age of 55 to retire in 10 years. That means that $1 million portfolio in today's economy would be equivalent to $1.28 million in 10 years. And so to reach that, with $560,000 in potential savings, that means that you would have to continue adding $400 every month to reach the goal. Which, to be honest, that isn't much because you've already put in a lot of the work and have built up a large portfolio that is compounded over the years. But if you are 55 with no retirement savings at all and just getting started, you would need to save $7,000 every month until you are 65 in order to retire comfortably. Knowing that, let's now finish off with the 60s. At this point, your expenses should be significantly less than earlier on, and you can also take advantage of the catch-up contributions for tax-advantaged accounts, where I'll specifically point out that if you are between 60 to 63 in the 401k, you are able to contribute an extra $11,250, and if you have a simple IRA, you can do an extra $5,250. But also realize that if you started saving and building up your portfolio throughout your career, by this time, your portfolio would continue to grow significantly every year that you continue to invest. For example, if you started with the first scenario of starting at age 25 with $800, the first year your investments would have grown only $347, but if you consistently did this throughout the years, from age 64 to 65, in that 1 year alone, your portfolio would have increased in value by $190,000. This is exactly why it's crucial to start as early as possible, and it's why I create all the content that I do. Which all I ask is that if you are finding value in this content, to consider hitting that like and subscribe button for future content like this. But for the 60s, the target amount to have saved by the age of 60 is 9 times your salary, so if you are making $90,000, you would want to have $810,000 in savings. And then by age 65, it is recommended to have 11 times your salary, so if you are making $100,000, you would want to have $1.1 million in savings, which is right about where you'd want to be right now to retire comfortably in today's economy, even if you don't have that much expected from a pension, Social Security, or any other income producing opportunities. All in all, just understand that even if your salary is not that high right now, the 2 biggest factors are the amount that you can save every month and how soon you get started. Someone with a $50,000 salary may easily be able to save and invest more than someone with a $100,000 salary, because it all depends on the lifestyle that you live. In fact, the real world example of this is a janitor who amassed an $8 million fortune throughout his career just because he was careful with his savings and invested his money wisely. Now, if you are interested in starting an emergency fund with a high yield savings account or to invest on a new investment platform, I'll have direct links below to some of the top options currently in the market. Which, while you're at it, I've also created many other free learning guides and relevant videos similar to this topic that I think you'll greatly benefit from. Which, if you want to see exactly how I allocate each of my investments and other exclusive content, don't forget to check out the Patreon I have linked in the description below. And as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button for future content like this.